This money rule sounds boring, but it controls your future. It's not crypto, it's not some secret stock, and it's not what rich people whisper about at country clubs. It's a rule so basic you probably heard it once in school, half listened, and forgot it. But this one rule will quietly decide whether 65-year-old you is stressed, still working, and scared to check the mail, or free, calm, and actually enjoying life. Over the next few minutes, I want you to imagine you're sitting with your future self across the table, because the way you treat this one boring money rule today is literally deciding who's going to show up in that chair. And once you really see it, you will not be able to look at your paycheck, your debt, or your spending the same way again. Let me start with a real story. In 2012, two friends, we'll call them Mia and Brandon, were 22 years old, graduating from a state university in the U.S. They both had that mix of hope and anxiety you might recognize. Student loans hanging over their heads, first jobs, cheap apartments, roommates, dollar pizza, and a beat-up car that always needed something fixed. Mia landed an entry-level marketing job making about $42,000 a year. Not amazing, not terrible. Brandon started in sales making roughly the same. They both had loans, both paid rent, and both wanted to enjoy their 20s after grinding through school. They were normal, optimistic, and a little clueless about money, the way most of us are at that age. One afternoon, their company's HR person came in and did a 401k presentation. You know the exact scene. Fluorescent conference room, stale coffee in paper cups, a projector that takes 3 tries to connect, and a PowerPoint with way too many charts in tiny fonts. Half the room was scrolling their phones. A few people were pretending to listen while secretly answering emails. Most were just there for the free cookies. The HR lady started talking about things like compound interest, tax advantages, and employer match. It sounded like grown-up noise. Boring. Something your parents worried about, not something you're supposed to care about when you're 22 and just trying to figure out how to not bounce your rent check. Everyone in that room heard the same words, but what they did with those words changed everything. Mia went back to her desk, opened the 401k email, and thought, I barely understand this, but if they're literally giving me free money, I should probably do something. She clicked enroll. She set her contribution to 6% of her paycheck because the company matched 3%, and that's what the slide said was smart. She scrolled through the investment options, got overwhelmed, and picked a target date retirement fund because it had the word simple in the description. Then she did the most powerful thing you can do with money. She left it alone and forgot about it. Brandon walked out of that same meeting with a totally different feeling. He thought, man, I'll start this later. Right now I need all of my paycheck. I've got loans. I've got this car payment. I want to travel a little. I'll invest when I'm making more and life calms down. He didn't click the email. He told himself, it's fine. I'll come back to it when I'm ready. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. And that email slid deeper and deeper into his inbox until it disappeared under thousands of others. Now hit fast forward. They're both 32. They've each moved jobs a couple of times. They've moved apartments, picked up some new furniture, gone on a few trips, and lived a pretty average American decade. Mia has had promotions and job changes. She's not rich. She still has student loans. She still worries sometimes about money. But her automatic 401k contributions have followed her. Each new job, she spends 10 or 15 minutes to set them up again. 10 years later, she checks her retirement account on a random Sunday and almost falls off the couch. There's over $70,000 sitting there. She never once picked a hot stock. She never opened a trading app. She never sat up at night reading financial news. Her only strategy was, put a little in every paycheck, don't touch it, and let the boring rule do its thing in the background. Brandon, at 32, is finally starting to feel that ache in his stomach. He's thinking about kids. He's starting to realize his parents are aging. A coworker mentions their retirement account at lunch, and he laughs it off like, "Man, I don't even want to look at mine." Later that night, curiosity and anxiety win. He opens a retirement calculator online and punches in his age, income, and current savings. The number it spits out for the future makes him feel sick. He scrolls to find a way to fix it quickly, but there's no magic button. Same starting point, same age, same country. One boring decision. Listen to the rule or ignore it. The boring rule I'm talking about is this: money that quietly earns money and then earns money on that money will always outrun money that just sits there, and it will completely destroy money that's constantly bleeding from interest and fees. Most people know the name for this, compound interest. But I don't want you to think of it as some school concept with a graph. I want you to think of it as the rule of money that works versus money that waits versus money that works against you. The reason this sounds boring is because it's slow at first. The reason it controls your future is because in America, almost everything about your long-term life, retirement, freedom, options, choices, depends on whether you let this rule work for you, work against you, or not work at all. Forget the charts. Imagine you plant a money tree. Year 1, it's a tiny sprout. You put $100 in the ground. At the end of the year, it grows to $108. Not exciting. $8 won't change your life. But here's the key. Next year, you're not just growing the original 100. You're growing 108. The year after, you're growing that bigger number. Every year, the base you're growing from gets a little larger. At first, it looks flat. Nothing seems to happen. Then slowly, the line starts to curve. And if you give it enough time, it starts to shoot up in a way that almost feels fake. That curve is the boring rule in action. Let's put real U.S. numbers on it. I'm going to oversimplify here to make the idea clear. We're not picking exact investments, just showing how time and growth work together. Let's say Mia, at 25, decides to invest $200 a month into a simple index fund inside her Roth IRA or 401k. Historically, the U.S. stock market, over long periods, has returned somewhere around 7 to 10% a year before inflation. Let's pick a middle number and say her money grows at 8% a year on average. At 8%, $200 a month from age 25 to age 65 could grow to roughly $600,000. From just $200 a month, that's a used car payment. That's one nice dinner out with friends and a couple of deliveries cut back. That's not billionaire behavior. That's boring monthly behavior. Now watch the boring rule flex. If she waits 10 years and doesn't start until 35, and then she does the exact same $200 a month at the same growth rate, her ending number at 65 drops to around $260,000. Same monthly amount, same investment style. She just started 10 years later, and that decision quietly cost her something like $340,000 of future money. Those boring early years are insanely valuable. You either let them quietly build a pile in the background, or you hand that pile back because it didn't feel urgent in your 20s and early 30s. That's the rule. Now flip it, because this rule isn't just about investments. It's also hiding in your debt. Think about a normal American credit card. Let's say you owe $5,000 at 22% interest. You make minimum payments each month, around $125. You know it's bad, but you think, I'll pay it off when I get my bonus, or I'll clean this up after my vacation, and then life keeps happening. At 22% interest, that $5,000 can quietly turn into over $10,000 if you're only making weak payments and still swiping. You pay interest on the original debt, and then you pay interest on the interest they added last month. The balance grows not because you're living some wild luxury life every day, but because the boring rule is working against you in the background. Same math, different direction. Compound interest is like fire. In a fireplace, it warms your whole house. In the middle of your living room floor, it burns everything down. If you're not very intentional, compound interest becomes a silent tax on your future. It takes money you haven't even earned yet and drags it backwards to pay for decisions you barely remember. Here's the emotional punch that most people don't think about. Your future self is already on the hook for whatever side of this rule you choose today. If you let your debt compound, 45-year-old you will still be sending money every month to cover your 25-year-old impulse buys. If you let your investments compound, 45-year-old you will be getting checks from your 25-year-old discipline. Now I can feel some pushback. You might be thinking, okay, cool math lesson, but I'm not Mia. I'm not 25. I'm 35. I'm 40. I'm 50. I'm behind. I've got kids, a car payment, loans, rent that keeps going up. How is this supposed to help me right now? That's real. And this is where emotions really kick in. As humans, especially in the U.S. where everything is built around now, our brains are not naturally wired for this boring rule. We love instant feelings. You feel the joy of buying something today. You do not feel the future stress of paying 18% interest over the next 3 years. You feel the slight pain of investing $150 this month. You do not feel the future relief of having $150,000 sitting there 25 years from now. It's like junk food versus healthy food. The reward is now, the cost is later. And later always feels like someone else's problem, until one day it doesn't. There's a moment a lot of Americans hit, maybe in their late 30s or mid-40s, where later becomes very soon, and they get smacked in the face by this rule. One day, you log into your retirement account at work because a coworker mentions theirs, and you see a number like $9,200. You realize you've been working for over a decade, and that number is not going to do much. That sinking feeling in your stomach? That's your emotions finally catching up to the math. But here's the part nobody tells you. The boring rule still works, even if you're late. It doesn't care when you start. It just does what it does. You might not be able to create retire at 40 money starting at 45 with no savings, but you can absolutely create I'm not terrified of my 60s money starting today. And that's the whole game, moving from, oh my God, I hope I don't run out of money when I'm old, to I have a real growing pile that's working for me. So how do you actually use this boring rule in real American life with normal bills and normal stress? I want you to imagine it's Sunday night. You're at your kitchen table or on your couch. You've got your laptop open, maybe a notebook. Netflix is paused. Maybe the kids are finally asleep, or your roommates have their headphones on. You're tired, but you're also tired of being tired about money. The first mental step is accepting this truth. Your future is going to arrive whether you plan for it or not. 10 years from now, you will either have 10 years of compound growth behind you, or 10 years of, I'll start someday. Both paths require time. Only one path rewards you for using that time. So we start tiny. We make the rule as painless and automatic as possible. Let's say you take home $3,000 a month after taxes. Right now it feels like every dollar already has a job. Rent, car, phone, groceries, gas, random stuff you barely remember buying. The idea of pulling out $300 for future me feels impossible. So don't start with 300. Start with 50 or 25 or whatever number is small enough that you almost don't feel it. If your employer offers a 401k with a match, that's usually the easiest place to begin. You log in and you set your contribution to maybe 2% of your pay. If you make $3,000 a month, that's $60 pre-tax. Your paycheck might only drop by $40 or $45 depending on your tax bracket, and your employer might kick in another $60 as a match. You just turned $45 of pain into about $120 of future help every month, automatically, without having to be a math genius. That's the boring rule and free money working together in your favor. If you don't have a 401k, or the match is tiny, or you're self-employed, you can look at something like a Roth IRA through a brokerage like Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, or another reputable firm. You can set up an automatic transfer from your checking account every payday, even if it's just $40 or $75 to start. None of this is sexy. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be boring, consistent, and permanent. The people who quietly become financially stable in America are usually not the ones making crazy six-figure bets and bragging about it online. They're the ones who picked a number, automated it, and let this boring rule cook for years while everyone else chased the next exciting thing. Now let's talk about the dark side again, the places where this same rule is hurting you right now. Think about your highest interest debt, credit cards, certain personal loans, store cards, buy now, pay later that rolled into something long-term. Every month, if you're not paying in full, interest is quietly being added. Then next month, the interest is calculated not just on what you originally owed, but on the interest they just charged you. You are literally paying interest on interest. That's compound interest working against you. Here's where your emotions can either help you or sink you. If looking at your total balance makes you want to throw up, your brain might say, ignore it, don't log in, don't think about it, we'll deal with it later. That avoidance feels better in the moment, but it gives the boring rule permission to keep growing your problem. If instead you let yourself feel a controlled anger, I am not letting a bank take this much of my future paycheck, you can use that feeling to fuel a plan. Take one card, not all of them, just one. Let's say you have 3 cards, one with $800 at 24%, one with $3,200 at 19%, and one with $900 at 29%. Trying to tackle all 3 equally can feel hopeless. The boring rule says if you kill one balance completely, you permanently stop interest from compounding on that piece. So you line them up and choose a target. Maybe you attack the smallest one first for a quick emotional win. Or maybe you go after the highest interest rate to stop the worst bleeding. Either way, you still pay minimums on the others to avoid late fees. But every extra dollar you can find, from cutting a subscription, saying no to one delivery a week, selling something you don't use, goes to that one card. Each month that balance falls, the amount of interest they can charge also falls. You're shrinking the base they're allowed to grow on. When that card hits 0, you redirect that full payment to the next one. What you're really doing is flipping the boring rule. Instead of money growing for the bank, you are cutting off their growth and getting ready to grow your own. Now zoom out and think in terms of life paths, because the real story of this rule isn't just numbers in a spreadsheet. Imagine 2 versions of you starting today. Version 1 says, yeah, I get it, but I'll start when I make more money. Right now is crazy. They keep a couple of high interest balances. They save whatever's left at the end of the month, which is usually nothing. Once in a while, they dump $500 into a hot stock or crypto tip, then panic sell when it drops 30%. Years pass like this. Version 2 says, I may not be able to do a lot, but I'm going to do something, and I'm going to protect it like my life depends on it. They pick a small monthly number. They automate it on payday into something boring, a 401k, a Roth IRA, a simple index fund. They make minimums on their other debt, but target one card or loan specifically to crush. They're not perfect. Some months they miss, but the default setting of their life is this. A piece of every paycheck goes to the future, and their highest interest debt is under attack. At 30, these 2 versions of you probably look similar from the outside. Same style of apartment, same car level, similar vacations, similar dinners out. At 40, they are not the same. Version 1 is starting to feel trapped. Raises came, but lifestyle rose too. Vacations went on cards. The car got upgraded on a 7-year loan. They're making more than ever and still feel broke. The boring rule has been quietly growing inside their debt instead of outside in their favor. Version 2 has messed up plenty. They're human too. But that little automatic investment has been compounding for 10 or 15 years. Their high interest debt is much lighter or gone. Maybe they have $150,000 or $200,000 in retirement accounts and barely think about it most days. They're not rich, but money doesn't feel like a constant emergency. At 60, the difference is brutal. Version 1 is staring at Social Security estimates and realizing it might not be enough. They still have a small mortgage or rent. They don't hate their life, but they feel fragile. One health issue, one layoff, and things could get ugly. Version 2 has a boring, solid 7-figure nest egg they built slowly. They're still careful, they're not celebrities, but they have choices. They can work because they want to, not because they have to. They can help a kid with college. They can move somewhere they like instead of somewhere that's just cheap. Again, same country, same decades, similar starting points. The boring rule, used or ignored, is the difference. If you're feeling a mix of regret and motivation right now, that's actually perfect. Regret by itself just makes you feel stuck. Motivation with no honesty stays shallow and fades. But regret plus motivation? That's fuel. So let's turn that into something practical you can start this month, even if you feel behind. Think of it as a 30-day, make the boring rule my friend challenge. For the next 30 days, your goal is not to become a different person. It's to change the default setting of how your money moves. In the first week, focus on awareness and one tiny win. Sometime this week, open every place your money lives and leaks. Log into your checking account, your savings, your credit cards, your 401k if you have one, and your student loans. Write down 3 numbers somewhere. The total of your high-interest debt, anything with a rate around 8% or higher. The total amount you currently have invested for your future, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, that kind of thing, and the amount you could realistically move every month without panicking toward future you money. Maybe it's $30, maybe it's $300. Then do one action that takes less than 15 minutes. If you have a 401k with a match and you're contributing nothing, log in and set it to 2%. If you're already contributing, bump it up by 1%. If you don't have any kind of investment set up yet, open a Roth IRA with a brokerage, even if you can't fund it right away. Just open it so the door is there. In the second week, aim the boring rule at your worst enemy. Look back at your list of debts. Pick the one with the highest interest rate or the smallest balance and make that your target. Then pull up your last 30 days of spending and scroll through slowly. Don't judge every purchase. Just ask, what could I do a little less of if I knew I was giving my future self a raise? Maybe it's cutting one streaming service. Maybe it's swapping 2 takeout meals for simple cooked food at home. Maybe it's reducing bar nights by 1 or dialing back on random Amazon stuff. You're not killing all your fun. You're just looking for $30, $50, maybe $100 of leaked money you won't deeply miss. Whatever amount you find, set up an automatic extra payment for that exact amount to your target debt every month. Now the boring rule is working less for the bank and a little more for you. In the third week, automate one payment to future you. This is where you lock in your investing habit. If you have a workplace plan, make sure your contribution actually comes out of your paycheck. If you opened a Roth IRA or individual account, set up an automatic transfer for the day after you get paid. Even if it's $25, get it moving. You're building the habit first. The amount can grow later. In the fourth week, protect the system and stretch it just a bit. By now, you should have at least one automatic investment happening and at least one automatic extra debt payment going out. You also have a clearer view of how much your high-interest debt is costing you. Take 15 minutes and check your accounts. Did the automatic stuff actually go through? How did it feel this month? Did you miss the money as much as you thought you would? Or did your brain just quietly adjust? If it wasn't as painful as you expected, ask yourself, could I add 1% more to my 401k or $10 more to that debt payment? You don't need heroics. Tiny, boring increases over time are how this rule slowly takes over in your favor. Here's a mindset shift that can make all of this feel lighter. Stop thinking, I'm sacrificing for my future, and start thinking, I'm paying my future self a salary. Because that is what you're doing. Every month, a piece of your hard-earned money can go to past you, present you, or future you. Past you is your debt. Present you is your lifestyle. Future you is your savings and investments. Most Americans, by default, overpay past and present and massively underpay future. You're just adjusting that split a bit. Maybe right now your money is something like 40% to past you, 55% to present you, and 5% to future you. Over time, you're trying to move closer to something like 10% to past you, 65% to present, and 25% to future. Not because you want to live miserably now, but because you want a future that doesn't feel like a punishment for your younger self's confusion. Bring Mia and Brandon back into your mind. But this time, imagine you're not 22. Imagine you're 37. You might feel closer to Brandon. Not much saved, some debt, a little embarrassed to even look. If 37-year-old Brandon watches something like this and says, "Forget it, I'm too late," then 67-year-old Brandon will be depending almost entirely on Social Security and good luck. If 37-year-old Brandon instead says, "Okay, I can't redo my 20s, but I can give my 60s a fighting chance," and he sets up even $250 a month in a boring investment account, plus targets his highest interest debt, he could still reach several $100,000 by retirement age. It's not the perfect, optimized early starter plan, but it is the difference between constant fear and basic security. Your future is not one big yes or no. It's a long stack of slightly better or slightly worse decisions over years. This boring rule is just the multiplier on all of those choices. If your default decision is mostly, "I'll deal with it later," the multiplier turns later into a brick wall. If your default is mostly, "I'll give future me something every month," the multiplier turns that something into a lot. Before we wrap, picture one more scene. It's you, 20 years from now, walking into a coffee shop in whatever city you end up in. You sit down with your drink, you open your banking app, and you don't feel that old rush of dread. You see a normal checking account, a small emergency fund, and then you tap into your retirement tab and see a few $100,000 sitting there, growing. 320,000, 580,000, maybe more. You remember this exact moment today, sitting wherever you are, deciding whether to just keep scrolling or to actually set something up. You realize this. It was never about doing everything perfectly. It was about respecting a boring rule that was always going to be there, whether you believed in it or not. Money that quietly earns money will always beat money that just passes through your fingers. The real question isn't, does compound growth work? It's, who is it currently working for? You or the bank? If any part of this hits you, don't just nod and move on. Before this day is over, do one thing that tilts this rule in your favor. Open that 401k email and set a contribution. Log into your HR portal and bump it by 1%. Open the Roth IRA account you've been putting off. Schedule the automatic transfer, even if it's small. Set up that extra payment to your highest interest card. Make it tiny if you have to, but make it real and make it automatic. The most powerful thing about this rule isn't the math. It's time. Time is going to pass whether you participate or not. You can either let time make your debt heavier, or you can let time quietly build you a cushion. This money rule sounds boring, but it controls your future. Now you know what it is. What you do in the next 24 hours will tell your future self which side you chose.